Welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And at this time, I'd like to give the opening to Councillor Damian Pinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today has been a difficult day for myself, as well as many parents across the province. With schools now remaining closed for an additional week or more, we parents are once again forced to take on the challenge of finding childcare, get the home offices set up for the young learners, and adapt our schedules to be able to work with their teachers to further their education. Originally, I had intended on writing my opening on a New Year's themed titled, "This Too Shall Pass," looking at the challenges that we collectively as citizens of Manitoba have gone through, and offering words of encouragement that we need to take pause and acknowledge the new strengths we have developed in our lives. However, I feel compelled to talk directly to parents of school children today. This too shall pass. We all received news that none of us wanted to hear today because we know firsthand the positive impacts that the school setting has had on our children in the last year. Yes, our children have had to don masks, have had to eat their meals separated from others, and have even been separated from their friends in different cohorts. They have endured situations that none of us have ever had to live through, and hopefully, with lessons learned, no student will have to again. However, they have been able to be educated by those that know how to educate best, our teachers. Having a child in grade 1, where the curriculum's main focus is on literacy and learning to read, I can assure you, I don't have the foggiest idea how to teach a young child. I have no idea what in the world a bossy E is and how it affects the pronunciation of other letters or how to explain the English language and at all, excuse me, in a way that a 6-year-old will understand. Oftentimes over this last year, I have found myself having to pull up the wisdom of Google to answer questions that my daughter is asking, or, even worse, telling her that this time the E comes before the I just because. English is truly a baffling language. Neither my wife nor myself are well suited to educate a young mind around a school-based curriculum, and I know many other parents feel the same way. It is easy to get frustrated quickly as someone that is not trained on how to frame a new idea or connect concepts in a conceivable way that a child will understand. After all, we are adults and the innocence of learning is well behind many of us. But how we teach our children as their parents is far more important than what we teach them during these times. When our children get back into class, the teachers will do what they do best and educate them. In us, our children need to see the strength, resiliency, dedication, and enjoyment that we have for them as we watch them learn, grow, and develop. As Anatole France said, the whole art of teaching is only awakening the natural curiosity of the young minds for the purpose of satisfying it afterwards. Encourage the learning, praise the time spent on difficult Zoom calls, and awaken their curiosity. Do the best you can right now as your child is learning from home, as this too shall pass. Then there is the social interaction that children enjoy at schools. Yes, there were restrictions within the classrooms, but many a time I have driven by a school playground during recess and just taken joy in seeing the smiling, laughing faces. Our children are laughing. They are learning through play and learning invaluable life lessons and social interaction while at school. Do not close your children off from these activities during this time. Much is said about screen time in young children. Some of it I agree with, some I disagree. However, there are many responsible ways of letting your child interact with others when they are not allowed to meet in person. I encourage parents to do research on safe social apps, monitored video calls with your children's friends, and set up time to play outdoors. Believe me, I am no fan of the cold, but it is amazing how quickly your heart will be warmed when you hear the laughter of children and the smiles glinting off their eyes from the balaclava-covered faces. This is Manitoba, after all, and it is winter. Take the moment to also heal yourself. Put your phone down and watch your child and watch what your child has learned and how they learn to play. Be intentional with your time in them. Winnie the Pooh knew what he was talking about when he said, "A day spent with you is my favorite day. So today is my new favorite day." Invest like never before into ensuring your children have healthy social interactions and have faith that the investment of time you're putting into them will let you say, "This too shall pass." Our children are our legacy. We build our whole lives around passing on our knowledge, skills, and life lessons onto generations so that they can hopefully have an easier life than we did. God willing, we can help guide them to not make the same mistakes that we have made and build them up into the leaders of the future. I know that today is a dark day for many parents, and we are all feeling different emotions: anger, anxiety, confusion, even a sprinkle of betrayal. However, these are adult emotions and need to be dealt with, reconciled, and we need to get past it. Be encouraged that we have done this before, may do it again, and will have to navigate this new challenge the best way that your household is able to, but this too shall pass. Hold fast and protect your mind from the negative emotions so your full attention and dedication can be on your children. Do this, and you are already winning the battle in educating your children remotely, and then they too shall pass. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Penner. Council, we have the agenda in front of us, looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Swagstra. Any comments?
No comments.
I'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council, we have the minutes of December 21st, 2021. The regular council meeting on page 1. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments?
No comment.
I'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. We have Councillor Penner, Susan Penner and Councillor Jake Siemens are not with us this evening. Looking for a motion to excuse. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments?
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we are just a few minutes past 7:35, so we'll go directly into the public hearing. This is 6A. This is Bylaw 2192, Special Service Plan 2022-1. This is referring to residential curbside waste collection. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workney, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, this particular bylaw, number 2192, as you noted, is a bylaw to update the city's residential curbside waste collection special service plan and the appropriate rates that are attached with it. The city's current curbside collection service plan was approved in 2019 and adopted a 3-year rate strategy with increases effective in each respective year. This particular special service plan has now expired as of the end of 2021, and a new rate plan spanning another 3 years to end in 2024 is proposed under Bylaw 2192. The current residential waste collection rate per residence is $145 in 2021, and that is to increase to $147, $151, and $155 in each of the next 3 years. Recommendation from administration is council give this particular special service plan first and second reading. Further, also note that public notices as required under the Municipal Act were issued, and there is no written correspondence on this file.
Thank you, Mr. Workentine. Is there anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file? Okay, we see none, but I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none at this time, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Council Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve.
And second by Council Hebert?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have excellent curbside waste collection within Steinbeck. Our garbage pickup service is done quite well. And in order to pay for that, we have an annual amount that is charged per household. Currently, it's $145 per year. Obviously, the cost of curbside waste pickup do increase every year. There is inflation for just a variety of expenses that do go up. And so this proposes to have small increases of basically $2 to $4 per year to cover basically the inflationary cost increases that we see here. So I think we have excellent service here, and we obviously do need to make sure we continue to pay for it, to make sure that the costs are covered, and this is a responsible way to take care of that.
Anything further?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Well, council, I do agree with Councillor Swagstra. He is right. We have great garbage pickup service. Great service comes at a cost. And when you look at this cost, this is a very small cost. No one homeowner or resident could remove their garbage for that price on their own. Not a chance. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor of first reading? That is carried. Mr. Worthing, we can go directly into second reading? Yes. Okay. Okay, council, we'll go, Councillor Hebert, second.
Motion to approve.
Second reading, okay. Second by Damian Penner, Councillor Penner. Go ahead, Councillor Hebert.
Further for what was just said, it is a small amount. When we're looking over 8 years, over 3 years, it's only $8, or over 4 years, it's $10. It's not a big increase. And like you said, Mr. Mayor, private business couldn't afford that, or couldn't do it for that price. So it's good. And like you said, we have a excellent garbage disposal people. And it's really well running. And like I said, for $8, it's not a big thing.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of second reading? That is carried. Okay, council, it's just a few minutes before 7:45, so we'll go down to number 9. Number 9A, accounts payable in the back of the book. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comment?
No comments.
No comments.
Anything further of council? Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council, we've got 9, we'll go into 9B. This is Bylaw 2193, Harmony Lane rezoning. This is the first reading. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 2193 is a proposed rezoning application for property on Harmony Lane. It does propose to rezone the identified parcels from RSF residential single family to RLD residential low density to allow the development of 2-family dwellings. This particular development is a multi-phase residential area. This particular neighborhood is noted as Phase 11. It is recommended council give this bylaw first reading so that a public hearing may be scheduled for later this winter.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve.
Second by Councillor Hebert. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a plan to rezone a couple parcels that are in an area of development, which would bring a little more variety of housing available in that neighborhood. And it'd be good to get this to public hearing and see if there's any feedback from the public.
Anything further? Anything further of council? Anything closed?
Nothing further.
We'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We'll go into 9C. This is Bylaw 2199, road closing. This is Industrial Road. This is first reading. You'll find it on page 22 of your package. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, this bylaw 2199 is a bylaw for a proposed road closing. There is an opened but undeveloped road allowance that is immediately west of the city's Works and Operations Yard, located on Millwork Drive in Steinbach. The proposed bylaw seeks to close a portion of that road allowance to allow for the further expansion of the city's operations yard. This recommendation is for council to give this bylaw first reading so that a public hearing may be scheduled for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve.
Have a second? Second by Councillor Hebert. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the city manager noted, this is a public reserve where it is, or public right-of-way, to be more specific. And we want to, obviously, the city operations yard to be able to expand. As is noted here, the public right-of-way is currently undeveloped and it's not used as a public road, and so closing it would not have any impact on the operations yard or any surrounding properties. So it seems like a fairly straightforward decision.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Call for the question. All those in favor of first reading? That is carried. Council will go directly into 9D. This is business license on page 27. There's a business that we need to have a resolution for their license to be approved. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. I took a look at business licenses for Steinbach, and this is number 106 for residential businesses, which is pretty exciting. And the non-residential business, there's 58 people want to do business in Steinbach. And I looked also at excavator licenses, which we often talk about. There's a total of 12 applications for the year. So pretty exciting, the amount of people that want to do business in Steinbach. No further comment.
Anything further?
I couldn't summarize it any better.
Anything further of council? Nothing in closing?
That's good.
Well, I would agree with Councillor Hebert. It's fun to do business in Steinbach, as some of us are in business in Steinbach, and it's a great place to do business. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, we are at 7:45, so we'll go up to number 7. We have a delegation tonight. Is Donovan, Toews, and Jeff Pratte. They're from the Landmark Planning and Design Incorporated. And I believe there is a package that was in your mailbox. Front page says water supply. And are you wanting us to follow along on this?
That would be great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, just state your name and your address for the record, and welcome here.
Well, thank you, thanks. It's good to be back, Mayor and Council. I'm Donovan Toews. Company's Landmark Planning is already noted. Address is 298 Waterfront Drive in Winnipeg. I appreciate how quickly and tightly this council runs its meetings. I'm listening and watching and down to the minute, and it's impressive. And to that end, just maybe ask how many minutes you'd like me to spend on this, because I can tailor it accordingly.
Well, normally, something like this, we allow 10 minutes for a delegation like this.
Sure, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that, and if there are questions, I'll leave it to your discretion.
Okay.
Great, it's good to be back. It's been a little over a year since I was at council previously. I assume I need to leave this on?
Yes, please. Yeah.
And at that point, we were talking about an East Region Water Co-op, a possible East Region Water Co-op, and we're still talking about East Region Water Co-op. So the title slide talks still about exploring that co-op. Nothing is concrete yet. There's nobody signed on yet. There's no water supply identified yet, but a lot of progress has been made, so I'm here to provide an update for council. This slide summarizes, and I will note that the presentation includes a number of slides that we presented last time, just for, has been some time that's passed. We'll recap a few items and then we'll provide the update in the latter part of the slides. It is a Manitoba Water Services Board project. The province has been encouraging regional systems. We know that even locally there's been cooperation on a wastewater regional system. So regional water system is not outside of what the province has been interested in of late. There are other water co-ops, which we talked about last time, and I have a map that I'll share again with some updates to that map that show that this is not necessarily a new idea for Manitoba. We do think it's important for municipalities to plan for times of water shortage and to benefit from the efficiencies. Again, I'm not here selling. I mentioned that last time, not selling the idea. This idea is being presented as a possibility for municipalities that want to work together to plan for the future water supply for their respective areas. Funding is available, and we will talk a little bit more about funding later in the presentation. I mentioned last time you saw this slide at council, the PVWC across from the west side of the Red River serves as a good model, we think, And again, there are other co-ops to draw from, but this is the closest one. It taking its water primarily from the Red River and distributing it to communities west of the Red River. We think it could be a similar idea on the east side for an East Region Water Co-op. Again, supply source to be identified, which we'll talk about. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. I shared it with council last time, but we do see that there would be benefits. I said I'm not selling, but of course it pays to look at the benefits and the potential hurdles that go with potential water supply. But that third bullet indicates that servicing multiple municipalities with one water source instead of many would provide a consistent, safe, reliable source. You can imagine RMs or even urban areas that have multiple wells. In some RMs, there's thousands of wells that, this project wouldn't take those away, but the idea of having one well where you can control it, you can treat it, you can distribute it, there's large accountability, and of course there's large efficiency. The last bullet on this slide, I'll reiterate from last time, it was there last time as well, which says if and only if a supply is sufficient, then PVWC could become a Western customer of ERWC. And indeed, they continue to express very strong interest in the possibility of a backup supply. And you'll see in the slides to come, I'll differentiate between the possibility of backup supply versus a supplementary supply, which already we know that there's a number of communities that are interested in a supplementary supply. Manitoba Water Services Board has been doing this kind of work for a while. They assist and help operate a number of water co-ops, which I'll share on a map coming on the next slides. And there is funding available. Funding, last time I had said that there was no cost requirement at that stage. We are getting to the stage where there will be costs, and that any municipality that's interested in participating will need to consider. And we don't have those costs yet. A lot of that will depend on, there's going to be two stages. One is exploring a possible water source, and that will come with costs because it costs money to go explore. And then if the water co-op goes forward, then of course there would be costs to establish it, to establish a groundwater source or a surface water source, as the case may be, and then to establish pipeline, which some may appreciate is very expensive. So there will be some costs coming in terms of a municipality that wants to participate. Those costs will likely be offset by contributions from the province, and there is some potential of federal funding, although that is yet to be explored as well. This map I mentioned earlier, and I did show this last time, except I made some additions. Last time it only had blue marks on it. This time I've added some red marks to indicate interconnections between water co-ops. This is a map that I'm quite happy with, as basic and elementary as it looks, but it shows a picture across southern Manitoba of cooperation for water. Those solid blue circles are all co-ops that exist. There are piped connections within those circles. And then those red lines I added show interconnections between those co-ops. So you can see I added a dashed red line between the Pembina Valley Water Co-op and some possible future East Region Water Co-op. The idea in southern Manitoba is a supply that can reach across southern Manitoba. And I'm very mindful of some old concerns and some current concerns about the idea of taking water from the east and shipping it to the west, as was attempted in 2005. That isn't what we're talking about here. We're talking about a co-op for the east side, but we're talking about also a secondary backup source for other co-ops if this could be established. The red circles on this map show indications where co-ops are providing water to non-members in their area. I shared this slide last time as well, that water is plentiful. I like to talk about a map of Manitoba. I have one that shows all the lakes in Manitoba, and when you look at that, I'm sure some of you have, you'll see that there is a lot of water, but it's not always where we need it to be. More than half of the water that flows from Manitoba into Hudson Bay originates outside the province's boundaries. And then I also like to cite City of Winnipeg as an example of moving water from a long way away from Shoal Lake, as we're all aware. So we do move water around. It is not unusual to do that. And then this is one of the last slides that we shared last time, which is quite a simple drawing. It simply shows the area we have gone to speak with. It's east of the Red River. It's both south and north of the #1 highway. But we took the approach we should cast the net wide, that at early stages of an idea, it makes sense to talk to everybody who might have questions, rather than, if you don't go out and talk to people, then people start to wonder, they make up their own story, to fill in the blanks. So we've cast that wide net. No doubt if an East Region Water Co-op comes along, the area will be smaller for those who want to participate, but we'll continue to cast the net wide and share progress with everybody as we go forward in an effort for transparency. This is new information. I added these red circles and red rectangles, I guess, dashed rectangles to the map. We did ask last time, and we've done continuing research as to where water need exists. Does it exist was the first question. Something has changed significantly since last time we were here and last time we were meeting other councils, is that it was a little hard, I have to admit, to get folks' attention on water planning, and in the interim we had a drought. And there's nothing better for getting water to the front of the agenda than a drought. Now these circles would have been in place notwithstanding a drought, but the attention is heightened, as I mentioned. The circles represent, as it says on the right side of the drawing there, an expressed need for supplementary supply. So we asked, is there a need? It's fairly clear there is a need. I expect to add more circles to this drawing, and we have to keep in mind that municipalities like your own are planning not just 5 or 10 years ahead, they're planning 20 or 30 years ahead, and as a planner, of course, we think that's a wise move. The distinction between the red circles and the red dashed squares are what I alluded to in the introduction, is that where there's circles, there's an express need for a supplementary supply. So all of these places, of course, have water like yourselves. It's not that they don't have water, it's that they are looking for supplementary supply in their long-term planning, as I'm sure Steinbeck is as well. The red dashed squares are that backup idea. So PVWC, of course, has its own source of water supply, but in that effort of connectivity, we do think it makes sense to be planning for interconnections between co-ops, not just within co-ops. So then I mentioned we haven't focused in on a particular source. One thing we want to be very clear on, and I think I stated this last time, is we want to be thorough. We want to have good science when we're looking for a possible supply for a water co-op. And we want to be very, very thorough. So this map starts to talk about the sources that we're identifying as needing to be considered. And you can see they're far and wide, all the way up to Lake Winnipeg. It might be a bit of a stretch, and I suggest it probably is a stretch. We even have Shoal Lake on there. We have other water co-ops on there. But we don't want to make the mistake of focusing in on one and being criticized later as not having done due diligence and thought about all the possibilities. So no doubt this map will evolve. I know there's circles I would like to be adding in the next little while as well. But what you're looking at are 3 types of sources. That's the color system on the map. The yellow are surface water sources, the purple are groundwater sources, and the gray are purchased water sources. So how do we start to zero in? We can't consider all of them in detail or go exploring to all of them. It wouldn't be feasible both in time and cost. So we start to analyze. I shared a version of this last time, and again, this will also evolve as that map evolves. But we do a rating system that's actually quite straightforward. We think it has a lot of logic to it. But we look at the variables on the left. There are physical and social variables. As an example, in the physical side, there's the treatment complexity. How complex would that source be to treat? How drought resilient is it? Is there even allocation available? The province license water. The water doesn't belong to any of us. It belongs to all of us, and the province is responsible. So have they allocated all that source out already? Is it close to potential users? So distance is a big factor, and pipeline cost. Cost is going to be a significant factor as well. How close is it to users? Is it complex to construct? Is there contamination security, or what level is it? And then in the social side, provincial regulation complexity. How complex will it be to try and license? Is there a federal trigger? Is there agricultural need or municipal or industrial need nearby that might make it more difficult? And are there international interests? So we take that all and we compare each source to the other, isolating each variable. And we just, so where there's red, you see it's more difficult. Where there's green, it's less difficult, not easy, of course, and yellow in between. So it starts to show how we focus in. And you can see where the least green points us towards groundwater sources. So the orange ones on the left are surface water, the green ones are the groundwater, and the blue ones here are the purchased water. So we are zeroing in on possible groundwater source. So we zoom in. I'll let council consider this one at your own time. but these are the groundwater sources. And again, we'll probably break these down into more detailed level of where these groundwater sources might be. But suffice it to say, all across the East region, there's potential for groundwater sources. And then very briefly, because I shared these previously, but three technical slides on when we talk about groundwater, what does it mean? The groundwater, when we talk about an aquifer, it's not just a basin under the ground. I shared this last time, but it is water in layers. Those layers of rock and sand exist in this blue area all the way from the US border to north of Lake Winnipeg. Those layers are illustrated here. As we know in farmland here, there can be clay at the surface and then till below that, and sometimes that till is at the surface, as you can see it coming up in this model by the tree in the house there. Below that is where you get into the water. There's the Carbonate Aquifer, also called the limestone aquifer. It's a stack of bricks. I described that last time. The water doesn't exist as a big basin, as I said. It's in between the bricks and the fissures, and those bricks aren't perfect, so you get pockets in those imperfections. And then below that, a layer of shale, and then the sandstone aquifer. Again, it's just sand, so you can imagine water in sand is very consistent and exists quite fine, as it were. So a lot of the wells are into the carbonate or the upper aquifer there because it's cheaper. You know, it costs more to go deeper. And then lastly, on the last technical slide is this one, which again I shared last time. This one where you can imagine yourself standing on the US border looking north. Red River's at the left or west, and the Ontario's at the right or the east. And to point out here is that Sandylands glacial-fluvial complex. It's another possible source. That's a very important source. I'm sure you've been following in the news of late. Others working in and around that Sandylands GFC, I've shortened it to. That's an area. Why is it important? It's important because it takes in the snow and the rainwater and filters through sand. And that's a great thing when water is filtered through sand. And then it feeds those two lower layers I talked about on the last slide, the carbonate and the sandstone aquifer. That water migrates at meters per year. It's not flowing like a river, it's just migrating. And as it gets towards the west or towards the Red River, it starts to get saline. So you get troubles with salinity as you get closer to the Red River. Last slide, we were in round one, as I mentioned last time, which was just to initiate dialogue about the concept, and now we are in round two. As I also mentioned, that we're here just as a follow-up to share what I've shared at council just now, and we're working towards creating a co-op framework. So we're actually starting to draft a memorandum of understanding document. So how does a co-op get formed? You need to get people together, you need to agree to some things, and then move it forward incrementally. So that's what we're working on right now. At the same time, we're working on identifying these supply options, as I mentioned. And we're going to move now into a phase of field testing, hence the possible costs. Our next homework item is to figure out what those costs are, again, in two stages. Exploring stage, so there'll be some cost to explore, do the science from a desktop, go out and probably do some pump testing and so forth at an identified site. All of that will cost money for the pioneers of a possible co-op. And then second stage would be if everything proves to work and a license could be granted, then you'd actually have to contribute to the establishment of that co-op in its physical form. We do intend to come back, and if you'll have us back, regardless of whether council's interested in participating, we would like to come back, as I mentioned, and keep everybody up to speed to share any results of field tests if we are able to undertake them, and talk about that co-op charter if there is in fact interest in participating. So that's the best I can do in 10 minutes. I hope it was thorough enough to generate a few questions. I'm sure there will be, as there were last time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Councillor, are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Heaver.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You're absolutely right. It's been an interesting year. A year ago when you were here, we weren't talking drought, and this year we experienced that. As you're aware, the watersheds are working vehemently across the province for water retention. This has been a really bad year for Pembina Valley Water Co-op, obviously. They got down to the last 5 drops of water, I believe. And fortunately, we did get some rain that worked. Concern I have, and I agree with you in supplementary water supplies and the areas obviously needed. We saw that in Pembina Valley Water Co-op. Fargo is building a diversion, the Red River diversion, and there's going to be 5 dams between Fargo and Emerson. I appreciate what you're doing, but my question to you, have you been in talks with the federal government, provincial government, or with Fargo itself, the city of Fargo, to see what that impact is? Because with 5 dams there, very easily they could, the Red River could be down to 0 water. And of course, with Pembina taking the water out of the Red River, that would vastly impact any supplementary water supply as well. So have you been in talk with any of those people?
No, I haven't been in talks. Our project team has not been in talks with the feds, not to say others, you know, higher than my pay grade are. I don't know whether they are or not. But one thing I'll point to, if we can go there in the presentation, is that matrix, the colorful chart. Whoever's controlling that. So red, next one back, thank you. Red River on this one is that second column. So I can echo what you've echoed in terms of that drought. People were skeptical. We had a picture of the Red River in a time of drought decades back, and it seemed unbelievable before last year. And when the drought happened, you could almost walk across the Red River, as you alluded to, Councillor. But that's not its only strike, so that would be drought resiliency problem with the red. The red is also completely allocated, meaning that's there's no license available for it. So we're not looking at the red as a source. You can see the bottom summary of this chart. You see some reds and yellows and greens. So we're focused now on the greens, and that, you know, the example you raise, or highlight rather, of the Red River, which we've considered in this chart, could be applied to many other sources as well. So clearly we're not going to look at those sources. So I think, you know, you mentioned PVWC in your question. I'm not sure if that was part of something you wanted me to touch on, but you know, they are aware, abundantly aware. The other thing I might add to your commentary about Fargo and the Red River flowing north is that there's no agreement in place for the U.S. to allow the red to continue north.
You're kidding.
No, I wish I were kidding. The Colorado River is a really interesting and sort of unfortunate story, but you may appreciate it's a pretty substantial river, and it flows from north to south across the west part of the U.S., ends up crossing the U.S. border. But along the way, it's similarly allocated. They're drawing water out. You can't judge them for doing it. That's what they're doing. There was a point where it was just a trickle heading across south over into Mexico, and they built a dam to catch that last trickle, the Imperial Dam. And so now the Colorado River not only doesn't flow into Mexico, it doesn't reach the ocean. There's nothing saying that the Red River needs to continue to flow. So it's got some strikes against it. We're not looking at it as a source, and the PVWC knows that you know, there's nothing available on the red.
Thank you. I find it disturbing, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is pretty similar to what I asked last time, and obviously in the last year, you know, we experienced drought. But even in the midst of that, as a result, because of the fact that we have a very good water supply in Steinbeck, we have our secondary water treatment plant, we were fine. And so my question is, what is the reason that a city like Steinbach, that we have adequate water supply, we have our water treatment plant, it's doing very well, and it's good for the long term, that in terms of to put city tax dollars into joining the co-op or even participating in the exploration, like what would be the compelling reason for us to choose to do that?
That's a great question, Councillor, and you know, I'll say off the top, it will be for you to figure out whether you have the need, and talking to your engineers and your forecasters in terms of your water supply and your demographic growth and so forth. So not for me to answer, but I will give an example. Winkler, well across the river, they have an adequate supply in terms of they actually tap into the Winkler Aquifer. They're the only users of the Winkler Aquifer. A while back, everyone was kicked off, and Winkler got the ability to use the Winkler Aquifer. They don't rely on that fully. They also purchase water from the Pembina Valley Water Co-op. They purchase about 1/3 of their water from that co-op, and that can move up and down from year to year, but they have an arrangement with that water co-op to purchase water. So they have a redundancy, which some may see as security for both for the immediate and for growth. So I don't know if Steinbach feels the same way, that redundancy would be an asset. I'm also not confident about what your forecasting looks in terms of your water supply needs for the next 30 or 40 years. You know, if your forecasts are only for 5 or 10, I would say a compelling reason for joining would be to have that option that in 20, 30, 40 years, you've got a very reliable, tested alternate source. Not to take away your current source, if, as you say, it's adequate, so be it, but understanding in the longer term. And these droughts are a great lesson in what long-term means. What is long-term is long-term 5 or 10 years, it's not. You know, severe droughts don't happen every 5 or 10 years, but they happen regularly. And if it's a 30 or 40 years, it'd probably be some wisdom in pioneering, as it were.
Just a follow-up. So what, in general terms, like in a region, like what percentage or approximate number of municipalities would need to join in order for this to be worthwhile? And then kind of coupled with that, obviously Steinbeck is the largest municipality in the area. How integral is Steinbach to what you're talking about?
It could happen, I don't mean to sound aloof, but it could happen without Steinbach. There is sufficient demand. The map or the slide I showed that had the map with the red circles, you know, they're just red circles, but there is demand. There's definitely a need. There are other communities in the area, in the region, if you will, that do require this and will be pursuing it if they can all get together and agree to terms. And of course, council knows how that works. You need to get everybody in the room. It might be challenging sometimes, although I've never seen it at this council debating to the point where you just can't agree, but imagine getting, you know, 5 or 10 councils to agree. To the question about how many, 3 or 4, 5, I think there's probably a sweet spot between the more the merrier versus, you know, the more people, the harder it is to get agreement to start. So, you know, there's no science. It's probably a bit more of an art in terms of the actual number for pioneering this. But I would say 4 would be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Donovan.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Did a great job, and yeah, we'll keep this as information, and I guess we will be waiting for your next delegation.
Thank you, Mayor, and if I may, I realize I have one last question, which is, last time I said I didn't need anything from council. This time I am asking for something from council.
Okay.
Which is, we would ask you to discuss it amongst yourselves and do whatever you need in order to come to some direction. At this point, we are looking for some concrete sense of whether Steinbach would be interested. Keeping in mind, we don't have costs for you, and of course that would be a significant factor. But if there is interest, we would like to hear that. And if there is no interest, and in fact, you know, your needs are met and you don't see an interest, we would look for that as well. We will continue to communicate regardless of the answer you give us, but it definitely will help us in terms of forming a possible MOU and shaping this thing up to the next stage.
Okay, what we'll do then is we'll give this to administration.
Okay.
We'll get a report from our engineers based on our current water supply. Like we've got our original water supply plus now our new the one from 2018, I guess, or 2019, our new water treatment and supply, which can grow. Like that is built in such a way that it can grow with our city as well. So, but we have to get the numbers and the facts. We need to know what we're talking about before we can commit to anything.
Understood, and just to reiterate, I don't need a commitment in the next few months. I am looking for a strong indication.
Okay, that sounds good. Then we'll try to have something for you by the time you come back.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and have yourself a wonderful drive home. Good New Year. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, council, we will go to council question period. Are there any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the correspondence and petitions. This is the Multi-Material Stewardship Manitoba, referring to the 2022 municipal recycling funding payments. Mr. Workney, would you mind introducing this? Or is this just something we take as information?
It's just as information, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll just take it as information? Good. Okay, thank you. There's no other business. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Penner, second by Councilor Hebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Our next council meeting is Tuesday, January 18th at